Hey, welcome back to another episode of Addicted to Gear. Today we're going to be talking about a debate that's been going on for a very long time amongst guitarists, and that's whether or not it's worthwhile to sand the back of your guitar neck or not. There's guitarists out there that would never take any kind of sandpaper to their instruments. They would, feel terrible sanding anything off their guitars. And then there's the other side where modding guitars and making them their own, personal guitars has always been something that they like to do. And I kind of fall in between. Here in my hands, I have two Strats. Look very similar at first glance. Obviously, the necks are slightly different. One is rosewood, the other one is maple. But they are indeed both Strats and have similar appointments. Now, the neck on these guitars are very different. Now, why do I say that? Well, this guitar here has a straightforward neck as it came from the factory. This neck is finished in polyurethane. And this is a common finish for a lot of the modern necks on the Strats today. This one is a road-worn series. You can tell by the wear and tear on the guitar. And this neck, as you can see very clearly, has been sanded down. Now, this neck is not a typical thing. It's been sanded down rather aggressively, down to bare wood actually, and you can see it's also been aged, so that explains the different color that you have here. Now, road-worn Strats and Telecasters have really opened my eyes to the fact that sanded necks do indeed feel and play very differently. Whether or not that's a better thing or a worse thing, that depends on where you stand in terms of types of guitars that you like to play. Now, the debate on this has been long-standing. The early Strats originally came with bodies and necks that were painted in nitrocellulose lacquer. And nitrocellulose lacquer was widely used in the early days, but it didn't react and it didn't dry and wear the same way as polyurethane does today. Nitro basically goes on a lot thinner and it takes a long time to dry. It can take up to 30 or 40 days to dry completely. Now actually, when I say completely, I use that term lightly because in actual fact, nitro doesn't really ever dry. If you spray a guitar in nitro and let it dry for 60 days or a year or whatever, and then go back and apply another coat of nitro on it, it will basically melt into the previous coat. Whereas polyurethane doesn't react that way. Polyurethane is like dipping your guitar in plastic, and if you apply another coat of poly on top of this, it basically just creates another layer on top of it. So nitro, because it does go on rather thin, can be worn. If you rub a guitar painted in nitro enough, it'll wear through the finish. Polyurethane, on the other hand, won't do that. You're gonna have to play this guitar for 100 years before it ever starts looking anything like this, if it ever does. Okay, and that's the reason why Fender created their road-worn series and went back to nitro, because they wouldn't be able to age the guitar anything like this if it was made of poly. Now that you understand a little bit about nitro and polyurethane, you'll understand where this debate actually started. Because nitro is rather sticky and stays wet for a long time, it caused a lot of stickiness with the back of the neck, which slowed guitars down. Some people don't like that feeling of having the neck bind up on them like that. So some guitars started to experiment by taking off the finish. And you can take it off either by playing the guitar a heck of a lot or simply sanding it down. So when you take a guitar neck and sand it down, you're basically either sanding it down to raw wood, in this case, which is kind of extreme, and I don't recommend anybody do that specifically, but you can also sand it down lightly and just remove the gloss of the nitro or the polyurethane, and basically you're creating little scratches in the finish, and it actually it feels smoother in your hands and it doesn't stick as much. Now, if you're willing to try this on your guitar, you don't need very much. All you really need is a couple of little things. I like to use a scouring pad. You can also use regular wet dry or regular sandpaper. If you're using sandpaper, I recommend not using any grit lower than 1,000. If you're using a scouring pad, I would recommend you use the green ones because they're less aggressive. You can buy these scouring pads at any hardware store that, you know, they carry them all over the place. You could even buy these in your local dollar store or whatnot. If you're going to be sanding down to bare wood similar to this, what you're also going to want to be doing is you're going to want to seal the back of the neck. The reason why you would do this if the guitar was sanded down to bare wood is because you still want to protect the wood. You want to make sure that the moisture that's already in the wood, that it doesn't augment with humidity, because if you have too much or too little humidity in the wood, too much water in the wood, it can tend to warp your guitar neck and can cause some problems down the line. So by lightly sealing it with a wax that's made for wood, you're basically locking in that moisture and you're avoiding other moisture getting in as well, and it'll actually make the finish even smoother. You can also do this with shellac. You can cut it with, you know, a half-half shellac and half-half rubbing alcohol and apply a very light coat. Or you can also, there's actually specific guitar sealers that you can buy. They're a little bit more expensive, but they do the same thing. Either way, you want to apply the sealer with a lint-free rag and just rub a little bit in, and every now and then rub in a bit more to make sure that the neck is protected and it doesn't shift or change on you in any way. I avoid steel wool when I'm using my guitars if I can, because steel wool tends to leave a lot of little metal flakes or residue, and you don't want these fine little metal particles getting in your pickups because they can actually destroy your pickups over time. I do enjoy using guitars that have a neck that's been sanded. The Road Warden series is one of those guitars that feels like it's been worn in, like a nice old pair of jeans. There's some other guitars that I would never want to do this to though. And a guitar that comes to mind is, let's say, a Black Beauty Les Paul. Those guitars are really glossy, black, beautiful guitars. And, you know, sanding the back of the neck on those guitars to me would kind of, I don't know, it's not the same as doing it on a Strat or a Telecaster for some reason. I just feel very reluctant to do something like that on that particular guitar. So I don't mind keeping a guitar like this and having a guitar that has a poly neck like this one, you know, so I have the best of both worlds. I don't mind that. But it just works better on some guitars than others. If you've done this to your guitars, I would really like to hear your comments. If it worked well and you like it and you do it to most of your guitars, let us know. If you've tried it, maybe you don't like it or it didn't work out for you, or maybe you even ruined one of your guitars not knowing how to do it properly, let us know. Either way, I want your feedback. I'd be curious to see like how many of you out there actually do this to your guitars and like it, as opposed to people who do it and haven't liked it and maybe regretted doing it. So leave your comments below. It will be an eye-opening experience hearing what you guys have to say. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do, because there'll be more great videos coming your way. Hit the little bell if you want to be notified whenever I post a new video. In the meantime, guys, thank you for tuning in. And in the meantime, till the next video, stay tuned and keep rocking.